Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of Back to the Blockbuster. My name is Gaius Bowling, and I am joined by the best guy to go over movie anniversaries with. He has a whole podcast
Cool.
devoted to movie anniversaries. Our boy Mark J. Parker, how do you doing?
Hello. Hi, Gay. So good to see you. Thanks so much for asking me to come back and to talk about this great movie because this is so fun. And I'll show you real quick. I know this is an audio podcast, but at least for you to see, I
Yeah.
have, because I'm doing a fan film for I Know What You Did Last Summer.
Oh,
I have a
nice.
hook
He's got
right
the
here,
hook.
which makes me look like such a weirdo, but I swear I'm not. I'm just a nerd, not a weirdo.
Yeah.
But
The reference to the hook, my friends, is that we are talking about I Know What You Did Last Summer because it actually, on this day that we're recording, turns 25. If that makes you feel old,
yeah.
don't feel left out because it makes me feel old too.
Yep.
um,
Oh God,
uh,
yeah.
to give a little behind the scenes stuff of like what I was doing with Mark, like we were recording an episode of his show first
Yeah.
about Candyman for that anniversary, and then we segued into this, and it was kind of cool. Like when we were talking about trying to schedule it, I was like, we were trying to work out like, oh, we can do yours then, and then he was just like, okay, we just do them like back to back. And like in
Let's
my mind, in
tag
my
team.
mind, in my mind, I was like, I would love to do that, and I was like, I hope it works out, and I'm glad it did.
Yeah.
So we get to like sit around for like a couple hours and nerd out about two
And
really good
just talk
movies.
about some great, scary, bloody movies, right? Oh my gosh.
Yeah,
And how funny Gay is. I realized it today. Starring, they both have two characters. They each have a character who's blonde named Helen.
and there we go.
Sorry, that took a second for
So
me to get it
so
out. But
so
Virginia Madsen and Candyman, and of course, the ultimate Sarah Michelle Gellar as
so
Helen Shivers.
yeah,
Yeah.
so everything comes full circle.
Oh,
Everything
it's
comes full
perfect.
circle.
Yeah.
So before we get started, I know you've been on the show twice. Oddly enough, when it's been about horror movies, the first time it was about the 25th. It was 25th anniversary of Scream,
Yeah.
and I then on
Hmm.
that episode, I was like, hey, like when this new one comes out, we gotta try to get
Yep.
you back on for that, and then you ended up being on for that as well. And
Yeah. And then we
and
talked about
I
the new one. Yeah.
yeah, and I knew this anniversary was like coming up. And I think I
Yep.
messaged you like a while ago, and I was like,
A
I
while
don't
ago.
know. I was like, I don't know how we can make it work, but like we have to make scheduling work because I would love to have you on to talk about I Know You Did Last Summer because I feel like this is your wheelhouse and you would like
Totally. Oh,
be able to talk a lot about it. So like it was
I
perfect,
love
perfect.
like what like as you know, because we've said this before and it's been out there that horror was a little meh in those early 90s, but Scream, well, I loved Wes Craven's New Nightmare in
And
1994, like that for me really started the revitalization of horror.
yeah,
And then of course Scream, and we had like The Craft and other and Fear, like other good thrillers, but then Scream and I Know and even Urban Legend, like this was just like I was 10 when I saw I Know in theaters. And I mean, my mind, I was just like, I am loving life, you know?
well, yeah, it was one of those things, and we'll probably talk about it a little bit later too. But like everyone has like every generation kind of has like their set of horror
Yep.
movies. So of course,
Yep.
like of course we grew up watching like stuff like Friday 13th and Halloween, but they
Hmm.
weren't like our movies, right? They didn't come out like for
Right.
us. And like in
Yeah.
this time period where you start with Scream and then I Know You Did Last Summer and Urban Legend, The Faculty, like
Yeah.
all these movies are like
Oh, yeah.
even something and it's so funny, even something like Halloween H2O, which is like what was coming out
Hmm.
of like, okay, like we're doing this Halloween thing 20 years later, but
Oh,
it very
yeah.
much has like the DNA of these like late 90s
Oh,
like slasher
yes.
movies. And
Totally.
it was like they were being made for us. Like these people, the
Oh, yeah.
guys and girls that are popping up in this, like this was our Brat Pack. Like like Sarah
Oh, for
Michelle
sure.
Gellar,
You're
Jennifer
so
Love
right.
Hewitt, Ryan
Yep.
Phillippe, like all these like people like
Oh,
when they popped up in the movie, you're like excited that like to see them. You're like,
oh,
oh, like
yeah. Oh,
and
yeah.
like
Because
this was
half of them were on TV,
me
in their
already.
shows,
Yep.
Buffy, Party of Five, whatever, right?
Yeah.
And they all were so beautiful, which I know is problematic. And nowadays we at least have some different kinds of looks, but of course everything was pretty white and like so super beautiful and thin, and but
Yeah.
this cast was, it's funny because Scream, great cat, a stellar cast,
Right.
and definitely half of them were like hot, half of them are good looking, but then the other half are just like kind of like your natural quirky
Yeah.
like
Yeah. Yeah.
oddballs.
Yeah,
I know is like pretty much
from top to
90%
bottom.
like hot, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
When they were casting that, I was like, I wonder if they were like, well, talent or I mean, they had talent, but like was it
Yeah,
like,
I
oh,
mean, I think they're all still good, you know. They all
yeah,
fit
yeah,
their roles, I think, really well. But yeah, I think they were like, okay, let's do exactly what Scream did. Let's buy this Kevin Williamson script because he wrote the
yeah,
script apparently before even
for
writing
Scream,
Scream, right?
yeah, and he
And you
couldn't
can
sell
kind of
it,
feel like because Scream feels obviously super, super modern of
right?
that time. And I know is a little bit more of you're just classic fun slasher mystery, a little 80s
Yeah,
ish, you
yeah.
know? So you can sort of feel that. But yeah, they're like, let's just copy that and just have a bunch of hot people just screaming and running. And it
And you
works
can
so well.
you actually can see that like aesthetically in the marketing too. Like I feel like this when they started thinking
Oh,
about like
yeah.
how do we group these good looking people on the poster? Like how does like it was like
Oh, yeah.
this was
I
like the
had
start
this
of like
poster.
I used to have it too, and
Did you have it too?
I'm so mad I don't
Oh,
have it anymore.
and it's a
It
beautiful
survived.
poster. They're all so
Yeah.
blue, and the killer's red, and you know, again, it was very the lineup is almost just like the Scream lineup,
Yeah,
you
yeah, yeah,
know,
yeah, yeah.
but they're a little bit bigger. I remember J Love is like, I'm like, is she wearing a bra on the poster?
Oh yeah, oh
Whoa.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
I'm like, wow, we're definitely amping up the you know
Yeah.
attraction here. But I have a fun fact, and I'll say it on my show too. But and this is corny, but I'm just gonna put it out there. I had this poster on my wall, and I not all the time, but every now and then I would practice kissing their faces on the poster because I was only like 10, 11, 12. So I'm like, all right, I'm gonna kiss each one of them, and I'm just gonna like pretend and like kind of like get better at kissing. I know I'm going
That's
to regret
hilarious.
saying that, and that's going to be so embarrassing, but I'm just going to put it out there. Yeah.
You know what? A lot. You know, big faces on that poster too. That's a lot to practice on.
Yes, they were like perfect for
Yeah,
like my kid face. I'm like, yeah, you're like right here at my level. Let's
yeah,
kid. Let's see what it's like. Because I
yeah.
really like had a crush on like all of them, but I do think Ryan Phillippe in this movie in like the locker room, everything. I mean, I was 10, and I definitely saw that, and I was like, oh wow, I'm like feeling something.
That
This
was
is
like his
quite a
like
scene, you know?
first big thing, right? Like I mean, like he
Yeah.
had, like I only know this other fact because my mom like used to watch. Well, she still watches soap operas, but like
Right.
he was on One Life to
He
Live
was
like
on.
back in the
Oh, we
day,
are.
and
Yep.
like and he was like
Hmm.
one. I think on the soap opera, the first like they had a gay teen storyline, and he was a part of it, and I think that was one of the first times they actually
Yep.
did that.
I think you're right.
And so
Yeah.
I think that was that one thing he had done. Like I mean, I think he had done smaller things too, but this was like his
He
first big
also was
thing.
in. I never saw it, but it looked. It seems like a gay man's dream. That movie White Squall with like
White Squall. Oh yeah, he was in that
Hunty,
too.
Jeff Bridges, and
Yeah,
like
forgot about
Scott
that.
Wolf and all these boys and very you know. So I know he kind of because I know everyone. I know Jennifer Love Hewitt was truly like 18
She was
years old
big.
when they made
Yeah,
this movie.
yeah.
She was like
She
young.
was like,
And I know everyone was very young. They're all maybe what, no more than 23. So they're all
right,
really
right.
young. But I know Ryan Phillippe, it seems like he's one of those actors that comes along every now and then where like kind of like from the second he was 16, like he was like a heartthrob. Because yeah, like I haven't seen some of the older stuff, but like even in the One Life to Live stuff, like he already was being kind of given these roles of like studly teen, you
Well,
know?
he's
So it's
got,
funny how some people just,
he's got that face.
you
I mean,
know,
like it's a
oh
very like,
totally.
I mean, and like it's, and you could, I mean, it's easy to tell why like he took off as well
Oh
as he
yeah.
did during that time,
Oh yeah.
and like, and it's interesting too because like someone like Freddie Prinze Jr. who, I mean, we will talk about
Right.
this a little later. I think of the four is the weakest in it, but I'm not saying like not like a
I'm
not a total
yep, I'm
detriment, but
right
like
there with you.
I kind
No,
of feel like he's and maybe because like the character isn't all that interesting either. Like there's a
I
lot
think
going on there.
I
Um,
think you're so right, and I think that's what it is. I feel like because I rewatched this summer, kind of prepping for my fan film sequel that I'm shooting right now. It's the shoot that won't ever end. Weather keeps messing. Oh my god! But it's I think it'll be good. But yeah, as I was rewatching, I was like, you know, Freddie, of course, looks good. I think he got it because of his looks, and obviously we know his dad
his
was
dad,
famous
yeah, yeah,
because he hadn't really done much else
much at
before this
all.
as well. The guys were newer, the girls were a little bit more established from TV and everything.
Yeah, she
But
like Sarah Michelle Gellar did like All My Children. She won an Emmy for that.
she, yep, she did Soaps.
I think she had filmed season one of Buffy, but it hadn't like
I think
aired
so
yet.
too.
And then she
Yep.
went into filming this, so she
Yeah,
wasn't even like
Buffy had
huge yet.
started airing. 1997
So
was. I mean, can you imagine being
a
Sarah
great
Michelle
year.
Gellar in '97?
I know,
You
like
had Buffy premiered in like March, I want to say,
yep,
of '97.
a
So
mid-season
she
replacement.
shot
So
season one before I Know, right? And
Yeah.
so she probably shot I Know thinking like, I don't know if Buffy's picked up because I think this was shot like in the spring of '97, very soon
Yeah.
after Scream came out, right?
Oh yeah.
But yeah, you have Buffy, you have I Know, and then you have Scream too. I mean, like the trifecta of like, oh, I just
Yeah,
love it.
and
I
it's
I
a great, even greater time for it because like you have season like people have already seen season one of Buffy by the time this comes
yeah,
out. This movie opens like I mean, arguably season two of
yeah.
Buffy is when like
Oh,
you know
mm-hmm.
that took off and like so
Yep,
she was taking off in like so many different places. It was like a
totally.
really good time to be SMG, I think.
It's
Uh,
amazing.
and
Yeah.
like, and she
Oh,
loved, and like, what's cool about her now is like, if you follow her on Instagram and stuff, and she talks about like
mm-hmm.
these movies and stuff, like, like we've talked about
Yeah.
on your thing a little bit, like, oh, like, like the thing that bothers me the most is like, so I know Leprechaun's not like great, but like Jennifer Aniston doesn't really like, she doesn't really like talking about
Yeah.
it, right? And it's so cool when
Yeah.
like you grow up with movies like this, and you're hoping that like the people that did them like really enjoy doing them or like they still kind of hold them up to like hey yeah I did this thing and it was successful, I'm glad I did it. And I think
Totally.
all of them have been like, hey, this was like a really, it came out at a really good time
Yeah.
for all of us, like it was like
Oh yeah.
uh it really I think like it made I mean Jennifer Love Hewitt was already a star, Sarah Michelle Gellar was like on her way, but like I think like having the movie come out when it did and then it doing really
Mm-hmm.
well, um
Mm-hmm.
and it made like we talked about it with Scream on like the last one, like that Scream was a hit, right? But it was like a slow burn hit. It opened
Right.
low, it opened really
Right.
low and then became like a word of mouth thing. I Know
Yep.
You Did Last Summer was like a hit out of the gate.
Out of the
like
gate, right? I
like
think 3 weeks
I
at number
three
one,
weeks
I
3 weeks
believe.
of number one. This was the first time as like I remember being young, the first time I actually paid attention to box office because I was just like
Oh yeah.
I was so excited that it was like number one for like 3 weeks. It got knocked off of number one in its fourth week by Starship Troopers, oddly enough.
Oh, fun.
Uh,
Another great movie. Oh my
yeah,
gosh.
yeah.
Wow.
But yeah, it was like a really uh we when we did the screen episode, we were talking about like how important that movie was for the time it came out, and then
Oh yeah.
I can make an I want to make an argument that like this movie is also important in its own way because yeah, Scream was a hit, right? But it could also easily been a fluke. So like it could have
Mm-hmm.
been like, hey, this is not gonna really, this one thing did well, who knows what's, and like the people that made the movie, like some of the actors have talked about how like the studio barely messed with them while they were filming it because they were like,
Right.
it's a small little investment, like we don't know what's gonna happen with it.
Yeah.
um I think I Know You Did Last Summer becoming a hit was like the proof that the industry needed, like, oh, like these kind of movies are like back and here
Yeah.
to stay, and like then they started, of
Yeah.
course, like a fucking conveyor belt, just started making a bunch of them. um
Yeah, then it kind of became a little like overkill
yeah,
slightly, although I was
yeah,
totally
yeah.
into it. But I could see, I mean, this was also at a time that I do kind of miss, but I understand it's crazy, where like sequels came out within a year of each other
Yeah,
or less. Scream 2
yeah,
came out like only 51 weeks after the first one, right? So,
yeah.
and then I Still Know came out about 13 months after this. I remember that came out in November and I saw that in theaters as well. And I'm just going to let everyone know I actually don't hate the sequel. Yes, there are some total dumb moments.
Yeah.
I think seeing on the karaoke machine, I Still Know What You Did Last Summer,
Did Last Summer.
that is pretty rough. But I do appreciate the sequel because it does what a good sequel does. New location, even though it shouldn't have been the Bahamas or wherever they go. Yeah, I think they went to the Bahamas. They
Oh
should
yeah, they
have
go to
just
the
stayed.
Bahamas. Yeah,
Yeah, they should have just stayed. I mean, I know the first one takes place, this one takes place in North Carolina. They should have just
yeah.
gone to like, I don't know, Florida or up to Maine or just like a different seaside area for vacation. I don't know about this whole story about Bahamas and then getting
And if
the
you know
capital of
basic,
Brazil
if
wrong.
you
Like,
know
ugh.
basic geography, that's like, oh
Yeah.
wait, that's wrong. I remember sitting
Yeah.
in the. I know we're talking about the first one, but I remember sitting in the theater like next to my friend, and she gave that answer, and I was like, I'm not the capital. Like I was like,
Yeah,
did they write?
and
I
then
was like,
it's like
they write that
distracting
wrong?
because then
And
you're
yeah,
like,
I was like, that's either really bad
right?
writing, or and then when they like the twist, I was like, all right, I guess. I would assume
Yeah.
that someone like Julie James would know the capital right now.
Right, I know. You're like, these are educated college kids.
Yeah,
Julie's a smart girl. I know
yeah.
that if you're gonna do that, that reveal, that part of the twist needed to come much sooner. Like
By the
once they
way,
got there, it's like, wait a minute, what?
I'm assuming whoever wrote that when they were at their keyboard thought that was the most brilliant thing that could come up. They're like, oh, no one's gonna get this.
We,
And meanwhile,
yeah,
we're just like, I will. What I will say about the sequel though, it has some good chase
yes.
talk scenes in it. Like Brandy, I think Brandy
Hmm.
has like a really good one. Like,
Yeah.
I think where she
I
like
have to
where she
give
like
it up
jumps
for
off.
this
Yeah.
franchise because yeah, Brandy has a good chase, and we know Sarah
Oh
Michelle
yeah.
has
Has it?
maybe like the best. I mean, again, 97 had some awesome back-to-back chase scenes. Kevin
Yeah.
Williamson, thank you for giving us this, and then Gail's chase scene in Scream 2. So honestly, are they the last really memorable chase scenes in
Chase scenes.
slashers
Yeah.
since then? Right? I
I'm trying to
mean,
think of like
they're not as
like
common anymore.
because like even in that time period, right? If you have some good ones in Scream, there's great ones in
Hmm.
I know you did last summer.
Hmm.
Tara Reid has a great one in Urban Legend.
Yep, that one's
Like
fun.
there, yeah, there's not yeah they kind of died out and like and these
They
are
kind of
very
died out.
signature of these kind of movies. Like you want like that classic
Right.
like like stalk
And I
chase.
remember like I know we offline you and I were talking about the new Halloween Ends, but even in this new trilogy of Halloween movies, I mean, Halloween, which it's funny rewatching, I know, especially seeing Sarah Michelle Gellar's scene, the chase scene, it totally reminds me of that great chase scene with Jamie Lee Curtis,
Curtis,
calling
yeah,
out for Tommy for the keys and running through the neighborhood. Like it
yeah,
really made me think of that because she's banging on the door to get her sister to
yeah.
open the door. So Kevin Williamson was showing us again his love for the original
Halloween.
Halloween,
I
which
mean,
I
because
do
he like
love.
it's like I think he has said on record that it's his favorite movie, like Halloween, like either one
Yes.
of his favorite movies, and you can actually tell
Right.
that there is like
Oh yeah.
in that whole scene, like if you're watching it, you're like, oh, this is very Laurie Strode esque running
Oh
across the street.
totally.
Yeah, and like even
Right.
like the whole like, yeah, even the stuff with like her sister, like the way she's calling out to her, like yeah, it's just
Yes. I
like
love
you can
it.
tell that he
Oh
was really
God.
inspired. I do want to
Yeah.
go back just a little bit, just to like
Yeah.
what was it like for you when you first saw it? What was your experience with it? I mean, I know that I will just say that like this is at a time when you can't really go see R-rated movies by yourself. So
Yeah.
I remember me and my friends having to like ask these like cooler older people in front of us like, hey,
Nice.
can we say that we're with you? And like this is like a much more innocent time when you could do that. Like, hey, and then not like have them be like, no, weirdo.
That's
Or
so funny.
we should also be worried too, like to ask like random like adults like, can I go pretend to go to the movies with you guys?
Seriously,
But
honestly,
that's
I'm surprised that hasn't become a horror movie yet. Like
I know.
teens asking some random guy, for movie tickets, and then something happens,
I
right? I
mean,
mean, it's a
yeah.
pretty good concept. But so that's funny. So then, did the strangers get tickets for you?
Yeah, they did.
That's
You
great.
could pretend like you're with us, and like of course, when we got in, we separated from them and then sit with them. But I had to do that.
Totally.
I had to do that three separate times. So I actually saw this movie three times in theaters. It's on my list.
Wow.
Yeah, it's on my list of movies I've seen three times in theaters, and I always like name all the like quote unquote better movies first. I always start with like,
Right.
like I saw The Departed three times, like all these other ones, and
Ah.
I get to the last one, and they're like, oh, and I know you did last summer, and I always get like a side eye, like, wait, you saw that three times in theaters? Like, yeah,
Hey, I would
it
not
was.
give you side eye. I'm jealous. Because I'm pretty sure I only saw this once in theaters. Maybe I went again. It's hard, but this is the second DVD I ever bought. The first DVD I bought in like 1998 or 99, whatever that was A Bug's Life. But number two was
I know you
both
did
I
last
Know
summer.
and I Still Know. I got both on DVD that day at the store. So there you go.
Nice double
But yeah,
feature.
so oh, it's great, right? I mean, it's so good. You have to at least appreciate the sequel for some good. See, because that's what I was saying. It changes location, it ups the gore and the body
Yeah,
count, which is good. And the fisherman is scary. Ben Willis is scary, no doubt, in the first one, but I think
yeah.
he's scarier and more violent, more like
He's
crazy in
angrier.
the
He's angrier
sequel.
for sure. He's angrier for.
Yes,
Yeah, I mean, he's gone
right?
through
He
a lot.
wants
He's gone through a
these.
lot, but he's very upset.
Yes. Yeah, he's pissed. You took his hand at the end of the first one.
That's what.
He,
Yeah,
is getting you, right?
yeah.
But yeah, my experience from what I remember seeing this movie, because Scream, the first Scream is the only film in that franchise I did not see in theaters. I had my
Same here.
friend and my
Same here.
neighbor at the time spoil everything for me. She even spoiled The Killers. I was like, oh, I don't know if I was supposed to hear that, but okay. But I still loved it. But so I know, now I'm on total horror train. I'm seeing that in theaters. So I remember I went with my dad, and this was at a time when he would sneak in the video camera because he knew that I loved these movies. So I don't know if we went opening weekend. I have a memory of the theater wasn't that crowded. So I actually think we waited a couple days because luckily this was before spoilers and social media and
Yeah,
everything.
yeah,
Thank
yeah.
God. And so I think we went like right after school one day. And so I just felt so cool, like telling my friends, like, I'm about to go see I Know What You Did Last Summer, a movie none of you are allowed to see. And they're like, I don't even know what that is. And I'm like, losers. And so my dad and I went, and he had the camera in between us, and he totally was recording a bootleg version, but
That's
I loved
hilarious.
it. I was jumping, and I would watch the bootleg that my dad recorded at home. Like I probably rewatched it like the next day just to like totally relive it and see all the details I might have missed. But yeah, I
Yeah.
loved it. I was jumping. I remember I have a memory of watching the bootleg, and in that last iconic shot of I still know written on the
No.
shower, and then he breaks through the glass. There you can see I knock the camera, so it's like a jolt, and I scream. My little 10-year-old, ah! Oh God, I loved it. For a second there, Gaius, I actually said, I remember saying this out loud. I thought I Know was better than Scream, but I came to my senses. Don't believe that, everybody. I came to my senses. I love them both, but we know Scream is definitely
Yeah.
superior. But yeah, I love
Yeah.
this movie, and I'm so
To,
happy you saw it 3 times in theaters. I am
yeah,
jealous for you. Like,
so
wow.
I think what it was like, I think like you, I didn't see Scream in theaters. I actually
Hmm.
saw it at a friend's house, like on VHS.
Yep.
And I remember with seeing like the first trailer for this movie and being like, oh, we're getting like another one of these kind of things. I was like,
Yeah.
all right. And then of course, they then the marketing, it's just like, oh, like Kevin, like at this time we know Kevin Williams' name. It's like, oh, this guy
Right.
made Scream. Like we have to see this. And I
I
remember there
remember
was
they
like
said like from the creator of
radio of
Scream, which was
Scream,
sort of like
yeah.
a hot topic because I guess the
Yeah,
Weinsteins didn't want that. Blah blah blah.
yeah,
Yeah.
of course, because they're glorified bullies, and like
Right.
they like he's ours, and that's ours. That's their
Right.
train of thought.
Totally.
I remember like that, and then also I think too. I mean, I paid attention to celebrities and stuff like that when I was that
Oh
age,
yeah.
but I think it was like knowing at least with two of them, like I watched Party of Five, so I was like very familiar with Jennifer Love Hewitt, and then of course
Right.
I had already been watching like Buffy at that point, so it was just like, all right,
Hmm.
these two people I didn't know. I mean, of course, like, I didn't Freddie Prinze Jr. I only knew even at that age I knew that his dad was famous and like knew
Yeah.
through my mom and like her talking about it. But the
Yeah.
other two didn't really know that well, so it was just
Yep.
but these two girls at the time were like I mean, huge in my eyes. I guess they were huge. I mean, they were huge.
Oh yeah. They were
They
they
were. It
were
was a pretty
definitely like it girls. It's pretty
yeah.
amazing the casting.
So I just remember being like, all right, this looks fun, and like there's
Hmm.
some people I recognize, and
Yeah.
it's from the guy who did Scream, and
Yeah.
I'm gonna piggyback off of what you said. As after I saw this, 3 times in theaters, I actually thought in my brain at the time that it was better than Scream, only because I felt like I was having more fun. And then of
Yeah.
course later when I was like, yeah, no, Scream is a much smarter movie. There's a lot more going on
Right.
there. Like
Yeah.
I know you do last summer reminds me of like Prom Night from like the 80s. It has that same kind of
Yes.
like vibe
Which is
of
that's
it.
so funny you say that because I think of it as that as well. Because it's I mean, I know prom night, someone's kind of coming back and wants to
Yeah.
revenge, but also prom night has a good chase scene. I forget what her character's name is, but
I
the
forget her name,
redhead
but she's
who
one of the red,
actually
yeah.
ended up marrying Michael Crichton in real life, that actress. Random fun fact that
Fun
I've
fact.
learned, yeah, on my show. But yeah, that also has a fun chase scene throughout
Chase
the
scene.
school, which I mean, come on
It's a
now,
long
right?
and
Like
that's a
we need
long
more
scene
school
too. It's
chase
a
scenes.
long that chase
Yes,
scene
it's
is really
long.
long and like it
Yes.
plays well, but it's super long. But like
Yeah.
and but yeah, like I know you did last summer has that kind of same aesthetic. It
Yep.
like it really is like an 80s slasher movie just made in the 90s. I mean, it really has
Totally.
like that same kind of like and like I
Oh
think that's what
yeah.
he was going I think that's what he was going for. I think the problem with like at least critically, I mean not like financially because it did really well and people enjoyed it. I
Hmm.
think from a critical standpoint, it got like hit hard because this guy wrote this like game-changing like horror movie with Scream that was really
Yep.
smart and it was this. And I remember I was actually reading some of the reviews before like early this morning and like a lot of them kind of called out the fact that like okay, now he wrote a movie that Scream basically made fun of. and
Yeah.
like that, and that is like, and they thought it was like a notch down because of that. But I was like,
Hmm.
I think everything he did was intentional. With Scream, that's the kind of movie you wanted to
Yeah.
make, and that was intentional. I think what I know you did last summer, I'm pretty sure that Kevin Williamson grew up with Prom Night and stuff like that.
Oh yeah.
He wanted to make like a
It's
fun
still
slasher
I totally
movie.
hear you. It still feels like a love letter to slashers for sure. It's just
Yeah,
it's not really critiquing them. It's just completely embracing that kind of thing. But I really think it's a good mystery. You
yeah,
know, I think what might have hurt it is it's something I love. Did you ever read the book that it's based on by Lois Duncan?
yeah. I read it. I read it
I read
after
it
I saw the movie.
after. Me,
Yeah,
yep, me too.
and I was like, this is
Because
a completely different beast. Like,
very different, right?
very
It's
different. Yeah.
not nearly. I think one person. Does anyone even die in the book? I think
I don't
if
think anyone
anything,
dies.
I think yeah, Barry I remember gets like shot, but he doesn't
Yeah,
die.
die. Yeah,
And yeah, there's no chase, there's no fisherman with a hook. So I
yeah,
think
yeah,
Kevin Williamson made it better. I mean, I think he gave us the thrills that you and I
yeah.
love, right? But yeah, I know Lois Duncan was pissed, and I have a feeling that might have made critics not take it seriously as like, okay, so you took this story, but you just made it, you're more kind of, I don't even want to say the word generic, but just you're kind of more traditional slasher. But
Yeah.
I think it's better. I mean, the book isn't bad, and I know the show. I didn't watch the show, the Amazon Prime show that now is
I didn't
over,
either. Yeah,
but
yeah,
I heard not great things. But I did hear that they do what the book did, where there is some stuff with a twin, because the whole thing with
okay,
the book is that
yeah,
the person harassing them is uh, the I guess it's not a twin, but it's a guy that both Helen and Julie
and
are
they,
like dating.
they,
So,
yeah, yeah,
and that would have been really hard to do on camera. I mean, how do
yeah.
you
It
do
would
that
have been.
without giving it away to us?
Yeah, it would have
So,
been. And and I guess from like an author's perspective, I guess I can see why, like, hey, you took my little like quiet mystery novel and turned it into like
yeah. Well, I think
what you would
also
probably say
I
a run the mill slasher movie, but like, yeah, but
right. For her especially, I'm sure
yeah,
because she apparently, I forget when this happened, but she wasn't a fan of the movie as well because of the gore and the killing, because I
yeah.
believe her daughter was murdered. Did you hear that? Yeah.
Yeah. I think that had a lot to do with
So,
it. I think I
yeah.
remember after the movie came out, they actually like switched the covers of the book because I was looking online and the covers of the book was actually they just used like the one sheet for the movie as like the cover of the
Yep.
book to sell it and
Yep.
like
Uh-huh.
so like in some ways I mean she kind of won, right? Like I'm sure more people like went and read the book
Oh yeah.
like
I
after.
remember because of this movie, I got a whole bunch of her books because then I know she
Yep,
wrote Killing Mr.
Mr.
Griffin, which
Griffin,
then Kevin
yeah,
Williamson did
yep.
Teaching Mrs. Tingle. So I mean, Kevin Williamson definitely loved her writing.
She's
He
probably like,
just
stay
took
away
some
from my
liberties.
stuff. Yeah,
Yeah,
I wish
she's
she's
like,
like,
"Can you
stay away from my
please
stuff,
stop?"
please. Stop it.
Right.
Please leave my
But
stuff
I do
alone.
also think critically for this movie, the one issue that I will understand critics say, it it's still to this day, I understand it now, but I know for years I was still kind of confused with the backstory. Like, because I know the friends think it's David Egan
And
who's going after them because he was there that night. So the whole David and his relationship with Susie, who's Ben's daughter, it's not the clearest explanation of the backstory. And then
so,
with Anne Heche, who does
yeah,
an
yeah,
awesome job as
yeah.
Missy. I mean, we don't give her enough credit for this movie and her two scenes.
Genuinely good jump scare from her. When she bangs
Oh
on
yeah,
yeah, I
at
remember
the
being in the
car.
theater and
Yep.
like fucking jumped out of my seat. I was like, it's like now it's like silly, but at the time I was like, shit, it comes out of nowhere because it's just this like quiet moment
Yes.
between these two girls and they're just like talking. It's like emotional, and
Yes.
then like yeah, that's great. It's so good.
Yes. So yeah, that was I could understand why some critics are like, this is sort of like a mess or whatever, because it's a
So
little
was it?
bit
So was it
confusing.
like?
But
So it was. So David Egan. So
yeah,
was it that Ben was he on his way back from killing David Egan, like
from
from that
killing.
killing, and then he gets it by their car? Yeah. Okay.
Yes. So I almost feel like if this movie is ever remade, they should almost just make it in chronological order. So it should start because what happened is David, and I only know this because I had to recount the story in my script for my fan film, which is called Your Last Summer. So I know it now well, but I definitely had to like rewatch the movie, which I've seen 20 times, and
Yeah.
then like even do some wiki just to make sure I had it. So David was dating Susie Willis, and
Yeah.
in the summer of 1995. So 2 years before all the events,
All this madness.
he
Yeah.
was drinking and driving and gets in a car wreck, and he lives, but Susie
She just
dies. And that was on
dies.
4th of July, 95. So then a year later is when this movie picks up.
Picks in
July 4th, 1996. That's when Helen is crowned the Croaker Queen,
the
which I
queen.
love. And she's so like badass. And so
uh,
that's when David, I do love that the movie starts with that beautiful, creepy shot of the waves and
oh
the
yeah,
cliffs.
yeah,
And David's right there with that I love you pendant, like
yeah.
spinny thing that the killer uses. And so that's him thinking about suicide. It's a year after he accidentally killed his girlfriend.
My
But
friend.
yeah, so Ben is on his way there to kill him and get his revenge. Then, of course, our main four hit him, dump his body. So yeah, it's all Ben, but I know they think it's David. And then there's Billy Blue, which Anne Heche talks about, which I'm like,
And
who's
that ended
Billy
up and
Blue?
that
And
ended up being like Freddie, like Ray, right? Because he went to go
yes,
see. He
it's
went to go like
Ray.
see her, like yeah,
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 which is confusing because then later towards the end, Julie then sees him on the boat, which I think says Billy Blue or
yeah,
Blue
yeah.
something.
And that's
And
what she
she's like, oh
puts
my God, it's
everything.
you.
Yeah,
And
yeah,
and because going back to what you were saying, how Freddy feels kind of the weakest, even though I think he does well. I think it's his character. And I have a feeling it's because they wanted us, and it works for a bit.
to think
They
that he
wanted
might
us
be
to
like
think, yeah. They wanted the boyfriend, like Scream. They wanted us to think, oh, another bad boyfriend.
because his
But
character is kind of on like the fringes, right? He doesn't feel like he
yeah,
quite fits in with
he's
them,
not
even though he's dating
totally.
her, like he doesn't really
Yeah,
quite like
Barry, Ryan Phillippe is
like
definitely in
you
it
like
way
you almost
more.
wonder why they're friends because like when this all falls apart, I guess it would break that kind of friendship up, but like even when they're kind of friendly with each other, it doesn't feel like even with Ray, it
Oh
doesn't
yeah,
feel entirely friendly. It's just like Barry's just like,
oh yeah,
yeah. I feel like in my mind, Barry's just like, yeah, you're dating Julie. That's the only reason why you're here. Like that kind of like
totally. Oh yeah, Barry
attitude.
from the get go is a jerk, and
Yeah,
you can
that
tell like when you rewatch it, you're like, okay, this friendship is really just Julie and Helen,
Helen,
and
yeah.
they just happen to have
And they
their
happen to
their
have these boyfriends.
boyfriends.
Like Julie probably is
Yeah.
like, yo, Barry's like kind of an alcoholic. Why do you hang out with him? Like, why are you dating
Oh,
him?
totally. Because I mean,
Yeah.
once they dump the body in that great, I mean, that opening is it truly is awesome. I love how they're talking about going back to Candyman, urban legends, the
And,
Hook
yeah.
man. They're talking about that on this beautiful shot at the beach at night, and then of course they're drinking. They hit Ben Willis, and as Scary Movie said famously, "We hit a boot." I always think of that
I love that too.
when I see this. But
Shannon Elizabeth's
even the
delivery on that's
way,
so great, dude.
oh,
Her little
it's
line
she,
delivery. Oh my god,
classic.
we hit a boot.
So good. But even the way Ryan Phillippe, the way Barry, when they dump the body in the water, and then they're like, we take this to our graves, we make a vow, and Julie, of course, is really the main one being like, no way. He
Yeah.
like is violent with her. I
Lashes out
remember
at her.
that
Yeah,
well.
yeah, yeah,
Yeah, like he like almost like chokes her. He's like, "You say it." So
yeah,
so
yeah,
yeah, Barry from the get-go is kind of like that Travis guy from Friday the 13th. You kind
yeah,
of know like there's no way you can get out of this alive unless you really change in a year, and we know he
yeah.
doesn't because then
He
he's like
doesn't,
even more
and
of
I
an
guess
asshole.
what I took from his character too, and like I don't even know if it was meant to be this way. I always viewed him as like he was the most angry and like kind of especially the year after the event and all that. Probably because he was the most scared of the bunch too. I mean, I always thought that like he was just that angry and upset because like he didn't want like the repercussions of like whatever was going to happen. Like that was probably why
Right.
he acted out the most out of all of
He
them.
had a lot like going for him. I mean, so
Yeah,
did
yeah,
Julie. Ray
right.
seemed to sort of be like just destined to be like a local fisherman, but like I know Barry had the whole scholarship or
Shit,
whatever. He's
yeah,
the
yeah,
athlete.
yeah,
So
yeah.
yeah,
He had
it
the
makes
I think he
sense
had the
that he
most
would be
loose.
so erratic, but yeah,
Yeah,
and then it's sad then when a year does go by and Jennifer Love Hewitt looks she like her mom says, she really does look terrible. And
awful.
then poor Helen is just working at the Shivers store, like she's not going to New York to be an actress. Like I I am impressed that this movie we do feel for them in a short amount of
Yeah,
time. Like, oh,
yeah,
everyone, most of them are not what because you remember when it's summer before college or whatever. I mean, wow, like the world has so many possibilities for you, and so then
yeah.
to see them a year later all so different, it's a bummer. It's
Yeah, and
sad.
they really do a good job of like the whole contrast from when you meet them a year before, where they're all like we're at the pageant, everyone's so happy, and like there is a
Yes.
clear difference between like even the way they look and all that stuff too, compared to like that
Oh
next
yeah.
year where it's just like yeah, like Julie has like bags on her eyes, like she doesn't
Yes,
look
and her
like
hair
she's
is so
hair's
flat,
yeah, like
right?
you know, I always thought this. Speaking about hair, when Helen gets her hair chopped off, like
Yes.
all I could think in my head though was like, man, he did you a favor though, because you look a lot better with the
Yeah.
shorter hair.
Yeah.
But I just
Yeah, it
yeah, and
is.
I
It's funny. Those extensions, I mean, it's a fun. I feel like it fits the character, but on
it
Sarah
does.
Michelle Gellar, yeah, like once she gets that shoulder length chop,
Yeah,
now we're talking,
yeah,
like maybe, I mean, who knows, maybe it's because you and I are Buffy fans and that was on at the same time as well,
yeah,
that it
yeah.
just feels, because then she has that same length for Scream 2, that it
Too,
just
yeah.
it works so well for her, Yeah, that's
Yeah,
funny.
yeah. I just love that too. And like those scenes still stand out to me. I just remember in the theater like when that happened when she gets her hair chopped off. And
Mm.
like even as, like when you're young, you're like, oh what the hell? And then like
Oh, I
even
was scared.
something as simple as like soon on the mirror, you're like, what?
Yes. Oh, it is so perfectly campy, and I'm not making fun, but yeah, the way she breaks the
Like, breaks the
glass, and
glass, yeah.
but
And
that whole
apparently she's a
sequence
hard
is scary.
sleeper. Must be a
I
very, very
know.
hard sleeper that she didn't
I
wake up
know.
through.
You didn't even
Get
hear
her,
like the
get her.
scissors like near your eyes. Like, yeah. So it is interesting that they didn't make her like an alcoholic or something where at least she
Yeah,
could like pass it out.
yeah.
So yeah, that is funny.
And
But
I love
that
how it's
whole
supposed to be like a
sequence is
bad
so
it's
good.
supposed to be like a bad look for her, but and like they have her wear that hat at
Yeah.
first before like she's like, oh
Oh my God, the hat.
this is clearly like rough for her. I'm like, no, you look great.
Yeah. Meanwhile, then when she's in the dress at the like parade, I'm like, oh, you look amazing. But yeah,
Yeah,
that whole look during the infamous "What are you waiting for?" huh
right,
moment.
yeah,
Ryan's in his classic tank top,
uh,
and Julie's looking good. But yeah, Helen is not looking so good in
yeah,
the
no,
hat
it's
and
all
like
right.
these white like Reebok sneakers. I'm like, okay, yeah, you're having a down moment right
Yeah,
now.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah, you
So,
know.
speaking of that moment, like, what do you think? What did you think about it then, and how do you feel about it now? Like the whole infamous, like,
You know
what are you
what?
waiting for?
I when I first saw it, I loved it, and I still, I mean, yeah, I grew up, and yeah, it's a little, um, I don't know if I would do it in that situation, but you know what? I'm cool with it. I think it's great, and I love that apparently a child fan, if I'm remembering correctly, like suggested that line. I guess like it
Fine.
was like a
Yeah, I think so.
contest, right,
Yeah,
or
yeah,
something.
yeah.
So I just love that a fan, like a young fan, came up with that, and they were like, "Okay, sure." But this was at a time when fans could do cool stuff like that.
Little
Because I
stuff like that.
remember MTV during this time. Well, I guess no, it was earlier in the year. I remember before I even saw Scream One, seeing the commercials for the Walk On Roll that MTV was playing for Scream
Right.
Two,
Me
and I was like,
too. Yeah.
"But you had to be 18," and I was
Hmm.
like, "Oh my God, please, can I submit?"
Yeah, yeah.
So I do appreciate that fans kind of had a little bit of
A
like
hand in
a
that.
moment with these movies. But yeah, I think
Yeah.
it's fun. I like that scene. I have to say, rewatching it now, 25 years later, the scene where she discovers Max's, and Max gets an awesome death. The first
Yeah.
death in the
And
movie
I guess what
is
was like added in,
whoa.
like it was one of those things where like
Yeah.
the one I guess the one note the studio was like, hey, like someone needs to die because like no one's
Yep.
died for a while, and they're like, okay, well,
Yes.
so we'll do
Because
that.
I don't know if you've seen, but now that there's the 4K Blu-ray or whatever that just came out, which I
I
was
got it,
thinking
yeah,
of maybe getting. Did you get it?
I got yeah,
I know the deleted scenes are on there, and I know they're online because I saw this one. I guess they only shot the fisherman, which it still is creepy, but it's not nearly as good as what we got. But the
right,
fisherman just like opens the door, and Max is like, oh, like, and he thinks it's just someone he works with,
I suppose,
and then
yeah,
it just cuts. But
yeah,
yeah, seeing him emerge from the fog and then get him
okay, yeah, that
in
right in
like
the neck.
the
And
chin. Oh my
they
gosh.
go in on that like you're watching like
Yes.
kind of gag like for a little bit, and then he
Yes.
like pulls him,
Oh yeah, they were
yeah,
not holding back, and I appreciate that. But yeah, when
yeah,
she opens the trunk, when she hears the crabs, which I guess also crabs are just terrifying for me. Like I
yeah,
hate the spidery legs. Like when she hears that, and then she pulls over, and you know something's up. Because again, I don't think this movie gets enough credit for its score and the camera work because
dark,
that
yeah.
camera's moving,
It's
and
also
so
a
it moves
beautifully
with her.
shot movie too. It's a really
Oh yeah.
good looking movie. Like it, I don't think it
And
gets
I
enough credit
love
for that either.
any movie, especially horror, like how we were saying with Candyman and Scream 1. Some of the sequels, like Scream 5, didn't give me enough sense of place. But I
Right.
love how this movie, you know where they live, you know this town. We get enough shots of like the life here. And I love that. I love a good sense of place because you don't get too many nautical seaside slashers. So this is
Yeah.
pretty cool that like, yeah, I feel like I'm right there with them in this cute kind of little fishing town, you know.
Yeah.
So yeah, I just love
And
when we see that body with all the crabs. It still works for me.
and
It
she
is
has like
freaky.
a genuine grade A horror movie scream.
Yes,
Like Jennifer
she
Love
is a
Hewitt scream
good.
is like
Yep.
it's like it's weird because I know she was young when she made this, but it's like it's guttural in a way like almost like a little girl would scream. Like it sounds like
Yeah,
it's very like she gets to this place like pretty
yeah.
well. Like where you're just like,
That's so
yo,
oops, that's so funny that you say that because the difference in screams between her and Sarah
or
Michelle,
Michelle
you
Gellar,
can
yeah,
see it. When
yeah,
SMG screams when she sees her sister, which her sister has a great death too. I
yeah,
love that
yeah,
death. But when she finds the body, her scream is a little bit more of like a young woman,
woman, yeah.
whereas J Love is it's more of that, yeah, a little bit more childlike and it's innocent. And I mean it works
And
because
so yeah,
you root
that's
for
her,
her.
and that's her character. That's her character too, right? Like, and
Yeah.
she is the innocent one of the bunch.
Yeah.
I love after that scene when they like walk to the car and then they open the trunk and there's nothing in there, and Barry's
Yes.
line of like, "Oh, where'd you go?" Like, did the crabs carry him away?
Yeah.
Like, it's such a him in this moment of like, yeah, again being an asshole for like no
He's such a
reason. Like
punk.
she's
Yeah.
clearly upset, and he's like, "Oh, okay."
Oh yeah, and
Like
I
whatever.
remember because it was in the trailer when they go to his nice house. He's like the only one that actually is doing well a year later,
Yeah,
and
yeah,
you know he's there in his tank top and he says, "What the hell are you doing here?" Which is so cold. And they show
yeah,
him the
yeah,
note that she got, which I mean, the note scene is like it's just
yeah,
so perfect. I love
yeah,
that.
yeah.
But he goes, I remember he goes, "I know what you did last summer." Ooh, and I'm
Ooh.
just like, oh my god, you're so gonna get it. We know it.
And
Your
then he
time is
says,
limited.
and I think he says to them too, like, you guys should look in the mirror once in a while. You two like shit run over twice.
Yes,
Like
run
he's
over
just like,
twice. I'm like, that's
he's
your
like so mean.
ex-girlfriend.
I
Oh my
know, I know.
God.
You know what
Yeah,
though?
he's rough.
And they have you watched the deleted scenes? Because
Yes, I've seen most of them.
they give them a scene which I think they should have kept if they're gonna
Yeah,
like
later on, where
yeah
she says something like, "Why do you hate me?"
hate
or
me so
something.
much.
It's
Yeah,
at
yeah, yeah,
the
yeah.
parade.
At the
Yeah.
parade. I think they needed a little bit more of like a moment to kind of like. 'Cause, I mean,
Yeah.
I guess you weren't gonna ever feel sorry for him, but like
Yeah.
to kind of establish like they once meant something to each other, like in a
Yeah. I still
significant
do
way.
feel kind of sad when he does die because they might have deleted that scene, but we still have that really cool shot where they're at the pageant for her to give her crown to the next winner, and we kind of go through the scrim, like the lights change and
Oh
they're
yeah,
behind it, so it's see-through,
yeah.
and they are kind of like holding each other, and we know, you know, and she gives him a look at the parade where like, yeah, you know,
Oh, he gives her one back too, like where it's just like
yeah, it's a
yeah,
cute
yeah,
moment where it makes their deaths even stronger for me.
yeah,
Where yeah, they maybe were gonna rekindle something because we know Julie and Ray have a little bit of something still, but they seem a little bit further away for me than the other two are. You know, in terms
yeah,
of romance. Until then, they get together. But
yeah,
yeah, I mean that, and his death is great. I mean during the pageant while
yeah,
this girl's singing
yeah.
and the
So yeah,
light, you know.
it is really good and it's really well done. What has always bothered me from being
Yeah,
younger and even now is like nobody, not one person is curious enough to be like, yo, look at what she's trying to show. Like she's like saying
right,
like, and no, and everyone's looking at her like, oh, you crazy girl, like what's wrong with you?
right.
And,
Yeah,
like this whole commotion going, I'm sure like that would be a commotion, like him getting like
yeah.
hooked in the stomach, like yeah, and like
Oh, totally. Yeah.
no one pays attention to it, but I think it's well executed. It's really cool, and like the
Yeah,
way it kind of
I
cuts from
agree.
like yeah, it
It's
cuts
not the
from like
most
going at him and her.
realistic.
Yeah,
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 but I do feel like it works, but you're so right. And that's why maybe honestly Helen should have been a little bit of like a boozy because you know, what if she kind of in the year that's passed, she kind of got a reputation for like she's still not even 21, but she's like going to the bars. And maybe
Whereas,
that's
yeah,
why it's like, okay, Croaker Queen, like, did you have
yeah,
some before? You know, like that could have been interesting because I
yeah.
know the
Like,
cop does not believe her, and he's a death that's deserved. I mean, I
yeah,
love how he says,
it's,
what he cut your let me guess, he cut your hair with the hook too. And I love, oh my
yeah.
God, even as a kid, I was like,
It's like
she
no,
was
you
badass. She's like,
scissors asshole,
scissors, asshole. I'm like,
asshole.
wow. And maybe that's why like I've never been all that scared of cops. Cause even when I got pulled over when I was like in college, you know, yeah, of course it's nerve-wracking. Never was like, oh, I'm sorry, officer. I'd be like, okay, I didn't realize I was going fast. Sorry. And
Yeah,
maybe
yeah,
it's
yeah.
because
Because of
of Helen
that,
Shivers.
yeah,
Because she is not accepting this cop and his
at all.
attitude. And then and you know, I have to say, Kevin Williamson gave us two cool cop cop
Oh
car
yeah, the
scenes
art scenes, yeah.
back to back because obviously Scream 2, that scene is iconic. And then, yeah, Sarah Michelle gives us one of her great screams as the cop's getting it, and then
Yeah,
she's got to kick the windows, and then that kicks off the
the
whole.
whole build up in that scene is so good when she like
Yeah.
realizes that she's like that whisper almost when she's like that's
Yes.
him, and then like
Yeah.
yeah, she's so good in it.
Yep.
And like you brought up the chase scene earlier, and I wanted to ask you like I think you kind of said earlier, is it the best one? I mean, it's one of the best chase
I think
scenes
it's
in a horror
easily. I
movie.
don't. I I maybe I can't say it's the best, but it is for sure. I mean, for me with slashers at least, the three best chase scenes we've talked about. It's this. It's Scream 2 when Gail's doing that awesome
Oh yeah,
run in the school, which is great,
yep.
and then it's Prom Night, another school chase scene. I mean, I know there are more.
Yeah, like
I know
Halloween has a
Halloween,
really yeah,
like, but like Halloween still isn't as long and like elaborate as those other
right.
ones. So I personally feel like this chase scene is definitely top tier. If not the best, it's one of the. I mean, she's running all through town, then she's in the store, which the store is terrifying. I know it doesn't make
Yeah.
sense that all of a sudden he's under the
The
plastic like a
best thing,
mannequin,
yeah,
but it's so
yeah.
perfect, right? And then
Yeah.
she's flying out the window, and she really is giving us Buffy. Like she will not die, but then just because she didn't
Turned
keep
around.
running, she stopped and she turned around, and then he's there amongst the tires, which is just such a twisted scene that she gets it as this parade of people partying just goes right by just
Yeah,
a few yards away, right? It's like,
yeah,
oh, yeah, it's iconic. And that she's in a dress and that she's barefoot. I mean, it's just so, so good.
yeah,
And like I said, it's such a great little, send up to Halloween, to banging on the door,
or
hurry up, you know? Oh, it's iconic.
yeah.
So good.
I had a friend at the time, also a big Buffy fan, and I remember because like this comes out in October, and then Scream 2 comes out in
Yeah.
December, and I remember my friend was like after we saw Scream 2, and he was like, "Yeah, seriously, just watch like my favorite girl die in two movies this year. Like she
I
couldn't make it to
know.
the end of like both of them." I was like, "I know," and I kind
Totally.
of
She's,
and like with Scream 2, I kind of like got the idea just based on like watching TV spots and stuff. I was like, they're only showing her in like one kind of scene and one
yeah.
outfit. I was like,
Yeah.
I feel like she's gonna get it.
It's
Um,
funny. I wasn't that savvy enough then, but yeah, when you look back at the trailers, like she's only in the one outfit, which is funny
but
because she's in the great like movie class, the film class scene.
yes,
So they
yeah,
could have
yeah,
shown more of that, but I have
yeah,
a feeling, I feel like that was actually shot later. I think if I remember correctly, like some of the classroom stuff was not part of the original shoot or something, so maybe they
yeah.
just didn't have the footage.
I know she was also doing Buffy at the same time. She was going
Yeah,
back and forth.
back and forth.
Because she just wanted to she didn't care what she did in Scream 2. She just wanted to
Yeah,
like
I love
that
that.
like they like the excitement, which is probably funny because we'll probably talk about this because that movie turns 25 in
Mm-hmm.
December.
Yep.
The excitement for all of young Hollywood that wanted to be in that second movie.
Oh
She's
yeah.
like she has said like I don't care what you give me, I just want to be in it. Like even
Oh
if I have
yeah.
this like one Drew Barrymore esque thing to do, I'll do it. And
Love it. And she
that's what she did.
basically is. I mean, Jada's opening is the best. I love that opening. But yeah, then Cece, then Sarah Michelle has a great moment as well. But yeah, these filmmakers were really toying with Buffy lovers because on Buffy, I mean, she's unstoppable. But now
Right.
we have two great Scream Queen back to back roles where she doesn't make it,
Yeah,
and
I also
uh,
remember at the time too, like for a lot of us, when it came to Jennifer Love Hewitt or Sarah Michelle Gellar, a lot of people were picking one or the
yeah,
other. They were like you were either Team J Love or you liked SMG. And I had a
yeah.
friend that loved Jennifer Love Hewitt, so he was like all like when I admit when I first saw this movie in theaters, I kind of like checked out a little bit after Sarah Michelle Gellar dies. I was like, oh, I mean.
Oh yeah, that's
I was like,
funny.
I
Yeah,
was like, man, this isn't nearly as like fun. And I remember my friend at the
I
time
know.
being like, yeah, my girl makes it all the way to the end. I was like, but at that time it was like you picked, you picked one or the
Yeah.
other. At the time it was like you're Jennifer Love Hewitt or you're Sarah Michelle Gellar. Like which
Yeah,
one do you
isn't it
like?
funny how there was like such a divide where there isn't that with like, Gail versus Sydney or anything
No,
like
not at all.
this? Because what I think that calls to is this is just such a good mystery where the girls spend a lot of time together, which I appreciate, especially as they get older. It's not so much about the boyfriends because of course their exes a year later.
Right.
But the girls are, they even do that Angela Lansbury quote, when
Yeah,
they go to
yeah,
talk
yeah.
to Missy. Like they are investigating together. So it
Right.
is a really good like friendship and team. And like you said, there is actually some emotional stuff in the car.
Oh yeah.
Why aren't we what happened to us? That
Like
kind
you
of
could
thing.
tell that they were like when we were talking about like I wonder who's friends with who. You could tell that those two girls were friends, and
Yeah.
maybe like that they met these two guys and like the guys kind of
Right. Oh
just like
yeah.
were like thrown
They
into
have
the
a
mix of
strong
like
bond.
yeah they've already had a friendship,
Yeah.
and I think the guys got thrown into the mix because they just were
Hmm.
dating them, and
Right.
they do kind of establish that and show that with them a little bit. I mean, for a
Yes.
movie that some people would say doesn't give that much credence, it's just like a slasher movie. They do try to like
Right. Oh
show
yeah.
what this event did to some of them and like how it
I
affected them.
appreciate in the sequel they do have maybe she got paid for it. They do have a picture
Oh,
of
picture of her,
Helen
yeah,
in her. Right, I remember that, and I like that because that's something that the Scream sequels didn't do that much of. They didn't
so
really.
like Tatum
I know.
becomes like
I
an
know in the last
afterthought.
one.
Like
Yeah,
Dewey,
I know.
I feel like Dewey should be mentioning Tatum more. I mean, that was his sister,
Right. And like
and then
Sid
that was
doesn't even
Sydney's
have
best
like a
friend.
picture of Tatum or Randy or I mean like Hallie was awesome in Scream too. Like so yeah, there wasn't always the true, and I know like Halloween does it where like yeah, we're not I kind of like when it can be super quick, a picture or just a mention of their name, to
Right,
those that didn't make it,
right, right,
So
right,
I do like that at least the second one does know that
right.
Helen was an awesome fan
Yeah.
favorite,
And
Yeah, for
and
sure.
arguably she probably has the most fun part of the two. I mean, like
Yeah, I think
I
so.
mean,
I think
I
she and
mean,
Barry have the most fun
yeah.
roles
I
for
mean,
sure.
like
They have the most to do,
she gets the iconic
you
chase
know.
scene. I mean, like
Oh
not to
yeah.
take anything away from like Julie running around on the boat, but
Oh
it's
yeah, the boat. I have to say, I love the boat stuff. I love how
yeah.
she's going deep into like the bowels of the boat, and then she finds the bodies, which is
Oh, both
again
are
like
friends.
so
Yeah,
Halloween,
it's
so
just
80s.
like awful because she. I think Helen falls. What did she fall first, and then
I
she puts
think
her hand
yes, I think that's
on
what it is.
Barry's
Helen's
face. Yeah,
body, and then
she
on
puts her
the
hand on
face,
Barry's
which I
face. Yeah, yeah,
love.
yeah. Yeah.
I love that so much, Gaius. It's so perfect. It's so like it's almost cheesy, but I'm in it. I love the
Yeah.
hand on the face. Oh,
And
it's so
it's
good.
just true because like I don't know if this is like on purpose, but like Sheriff Love Hewitt, she has to react to both things, right? So her scream is just
Yeah.
like there's this one thing that happens and she's kind of getting over that, and then like this
Yeah.
other thing happens, she's like fuck, like it's almost like
Yes.
yeah, it's like so much for her.
And then when Ben Willis, opens the latch,
Oh,
and then he
that and
looks down at her, and then
yeah,
she does another like, I mean,
it's like
she
innocent
is a
girl.
great
Yeah, yeah,
scream queen.
yeah,
Like
yeah,
she's shaking as she's screaming, like her poor voice. My God, yeah, I
yeah.
do love the whole boat stuff, and that makes sense. It's just yeah, because she sees the Billy Blue, thinks it's Ray. At that moment, still like I think it just needed like a couple lines longer or
And
something. You know?
they tried to explain that a little bit, like when the movie's
Yeah.
wrapping up, when he's like holding her, and he's
Right.
like, "Oh no, well I had to do this and I had to do that." We're like, "All right, well, you're giving us a
Yeah.
little, you
But
have to
it's
give us this
still not
exposition," but it's like really weird. Yeah,
right. I'm like, okay, yeah, we need that explanation, but it kind of comes too late. And also, it's again so short because it's like, okay, so then you went to Missy. I assume he went to Missy because he was feeling guilty, but then they like had a little bit of like flirtation because Missy,
yeah,
like,
that's what it seemed like. Like she seemed like she was
yeah,
like enamored by him, the way she talked
right.
about him.
Yeah, she's like
Yeah, yeah,
Billy Blue. Like,
yeah.
so yeah, I think there just needed to be a little bit more there. We sort of lost it with that, but
Right.
yeah,
So so did Ben not go after Ray to maybe set up Ray as a scapegoat? Like, because he didn't do anything to
Oh,
him. So I always
oh,
wondered, like,
that's
if that
interesting.
was like, I mean, I want to believe there's a bigger reason than just the script being like, oh, you have to suspect Ray. But like, I
You
wonder
know,
why he didn't go after him
you
at
bring
all.
up a great point that just got my gears going. I do kind of wish because obviously this is a mystery. Who's sent the note? Who's killing us?
Right.
But the reveal isn't. I mean, I think Muse Watson as Ben he's a good
Yeah.
actor. He's
Really
creepy.
good.
He's very like raw and rugged and
Yeah.
like
Yeah. Yeah.
he
Yeah.
works well. But I feel like we needed to meet him briefly earlier, and maybe he
Right.
worked with Max and Ray, and it's just
Yeah.
like,
Yeah.
hey Ray, and because yeah, you bring up a good point. Maybe he didn't really go after Ray. Ray was so periphery at times because yeah, maybe Ben was gonna
God,
try to
even
set
the
up.
killer even the killer thought he was like an outcast of the group. Like,
Yeah,
oh,
even the killer's like, oh,
uh,
eventually it's gonna be
he's not that
easy. I need
important.
to have fun with the other three, you
Yeah,
know?
he's not that
Yeah.
important.
But I
Yeah,
think, yeah,
that's
what we needed to see was a quick little mention, a little like, hey Ray, like give him some work to do on the dock. And
yeah,
then later we realize like, and then maybe when she runs to him after she's like sketched out by Ray, he could even say like Ray, oh, or something
yeah,
just to show us that they like know each other a little bit, like even just
yeah,
briefly. Yeah,
yeah.
that might have made it a little stronger, but yeah, I do think he's a good bad guy, and he does have more to do in the sequel, for better or worse.
Worse, yeah.
Both of them really. Freddie Prinze Jr. does more in the sequel, even though still he's not on vacation with them. He's still like a supporting
Yeah,
character.
he's still on the fringes of like that
Yeah, they're
relationship.
like, okay,
He
we'll
can't
use you in the
quite
poster. You're in like a
yeah,
couple scenes, but you're not having all the
you
fun.
can't
Sorry.
quite have fun ever.
Yeah,
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 I thought I love like the kind of comedy and like the drama of it, like when like they go to his house and like and he basically is saying like all this stuff is happening to them and he's like, well, he's after me too, and he's like, I got a letter, and they're just like, what?
yeah.
He's like, you got a letter.
Yes. And that also was
Yeah,
another thing. I thought it was weird that we didn't really see his letter. Like,
yeah,
but I guess that was again, we're supposed to be thinking at that time like he might be lying. He's up to something.
right.
But you
And
know.
honestly, they really push it a lot because I just remember like the scene in the bedroom where they were like trying to like they're all talking about what they need to do to like draw him out,
Yep.
and he's the one that's like, no, let's just like forget about this, like, and like they're basically like, no, we can't. Like, especially Julie. I do love when like she's like, no, you have the parade today. And she's like, no, I'll go with you. She's like, no, you need to be there in case he shows up. And she's like, I don't want him to show up. Like,
Yeah.
but like,
Yeah.
but yeah, he's even on the outside of that where it's just like, why are we doing this?
Mhm.
Why can't we just try to like forget all this? And
Yeah.
they're at this point, they're like, well, we can't clearly like
They're like,
this person,
hello.
whoever it is not letting us forget it. Like,
Right.
and the way
Yeah.
they're and honestly the way they're all on the bed after they said like this is what we're gonna do, like what's it gonna be, Ray, and they all like kind of lean back like
Yeah.
yeah, and he's like still like fuck, I'm still on the outside of like this
Yeah.
foursome, like it's like it's I like looking back on it now, like I don't think I realized it so much when I saw it when I was younger that like
Yes.
he shouldn't even be there, like why is
Yeah.
he there?
Yeah, he's very much just like tagging along at times. Or in that whole scene, I mean, they kind of are, especially Barry is like thinking he is the killer. So he's either there to be
Yeah,
a suspect or just like, back row, like, come on, Ray,
yeah,
But I mean, it works.
Barry's even mean to him too. Is that when they like see the picture in the yearbook or something like that? And then he's like, "Oh,
Yes.
so that's the guy," and he's like, "It's hard to believe
Yeah.
that's the guy." And then he's like, "Well, his face is a spiral of the road, dumbass." Like he's just
Yeah.
so mean.
Yeah. I know. He's got some great lines for sure. Yeah.
Yeah, he really does. Oh God, nah. And it's funny too. Like
Yeah.
in real life, of course, in real life, Sarah Michelle Gellar and Freddie Prinze Jr. end up getting
I
together,
know. I love that they're
getting
going
married,
strong. I
getting
love it.
married.
Yeah.
And someone pointed out, like I didn't even realize this while watching it. I think someone online or someone posted it somewhere. Their characters in the movie only exchange like one line where she's like,
Yeah.
she says, when he's telling the story, she says, I don't think so, Ray. That's the only time they actually talk
Right.
to
They
one on one
they
to each other.
barely totally. They're in a few scenes together for sure, but they barely ever
Ever
actually even
interact?
acknowledge each
Yeah,
other, which is so funny.
yeah,
Ray and Barry have more to do. Obviously Ray and Julie, but
yeah.
yeah, that's
They
funny how
don't
that worked
interact at
out. But
all.
I love
Yeah,
that they're 20 years strong. I think she
yeah,
posted earlier this year. Yeah,
yeah. I remember at the
totally.
time, like if I was like in my brain, I was like, oh, she's gonna end up with that Ryan Phillippe guy because they're like, they
I
do I know you
know.
do us, they do I
Because
know
then
you do
they
us summer
did
and
Cruel
cruel
Intentions.
intentions, yeah.
Yeah,
And like, no,
right? And
he
they
was
look so good together, but nope.
so fun. Also, I didn't know this either until I read up about, oddly enough, the 20th anniversary for Cruel Intentions. They were talking about Reese Witherspoon said that when she first got the script for, at the time it was called Cruel Inventions at the time,
Mm.
she was actually visiting him on set of I Know What You Did Last Summer. They had already been like
Oh,
they had already been like kind of seeing each other already.
oh, that's
And like,
funny. I didn't
so
realize
I
that.
didn't know it went that far back until she like, she did
Yeah.
like an interview with like Entertainment Weekly, and she's like, yeah, well, like when I first got the script for Cruel Intentions, we were talking about it. Like that's how long that movie they were trying to like do this like
Wow.
updated
Yeah.
teen version of it. And she said, yeah, I was visiting like Ryan on the set. I Know You Did Last Summer. I was like, what? So they're
Wow.
already a
They
thing.
really did go way back. Yeah. Wow, that's amazing. And I love the two of them. That's sad when they broke up. I remember I was like, "What? They like look
Yeah.
so alike. They're so like all American, blonde, white, like cute couple,
Yeah.
you know. But
You know,
you
I think
know,
what happened with them, man, I think like her star rose got pretty big,
yeah.
and like I mean
And I think he
I don't want
was
to assume that like he would feel like he was being like emasculated. I think the industry kind of made him feel that way. I think the way they talked about, I remember one trade
well.
actually
He even
called him like miss like by her last name. Like trying to like almost like say
oh, Mr.
insinuating that she,
Witherspoon, yeah.
yeah, that he, she was bigger
Well,
than
I
him.
remember at one of the Oscar ceremonies on TV, they were presenting an award together, which
I
is kind
remember
of
this.
amazing to think like Ryan Phillippe was at the Oscars and he said, "You can open it, you make more money," or something
Money,
like
man.
that. And
Oh
she was
yeah,
embarrassed.
yeah. They probably
Yeah,
got into a
apparently that,
fight on the way
if I'm
home.
remembering correctly, yeah, that apparently like maybe started the eventual downfall of,
Oh
yeah,
yeah,
so it's a bummer, but love them all. I love Reese.
that
I love
whole
this
little,
cast. I mean, it's so
yeah,
fun. Yeah.
big fun. Before we wrap up, I was just thinking when we were talking about I still know what you did last summer, and I was thinking of like the two best friend roles. Yeah, we have Brandy, and then you have Sarah Michelle
Yeah.
Gellar. I'm
Yeah.
almost think it's unfair to ask you like who do you prefer?
Oh gosh, that's so tough. Because also then Scream and Scream 2 with Tatum and then
Hey, man,
Hallie.
yeah,
It's
yeah,
funny
yeah,
how
yeah,
like
yeah.
the sequels like went,
And honestly, and then,
African
they put
American.
the American, yeah. And Hallie was actually a
Right.
good supporting, like
Oh,
That character
totally.
doesn't get enough credit, I don't think, too. Like she
No. I think it's
is
just because the
really good,
cast for Scream 2 was so
so
solid
stacked.
that
It's so stacked. Yeah, yeah,
you know. But I mean, I love Carla. I think Brandy's great in the sequel, and I choose to believe that Brandy is actually in the first one as Julie's
Oh,
roommate.
the
But
black
we
girl that in
just
is
yeah,
she the black girl in the big girl?
I
Yeah,
even though her name is not Carla, I like to believe that that is Brandy.
yeah.
But so technically she's in both movies. But I mean, Helen all the way. You got to go with Helen. It's hard to compare. She's just so cool and vulnerable and badass and beautiful and yeah,
Yeah.
totally.
I will say
And
though,
on
I
that
think
note, I
yeah.
was gonna say, sorry, Gaius. On that note, it's already 6. I gotta
Oh
go.
shit. Okay.
Do you wanna
Yeah,
do you wanna
we'll
wrap?
wrap.
We can wrap
Yeah,
it up or whatever
yeah.
you
No,
want.
no,
Sorry,
no.
I just
We'll
realized
no, we'll totally wrap it up. Thank you for being on and talking about this. I mean, I think that's why we went long because it's impossible not to talk this long about this
we
kind of
could keep
stuff.
going, right?
But yeah, 25 years strong, and it's still probably one of our favorites. And like, it's fun to look back on it and
Ah,
revisit it. And like I said, I reached out to you a long time ago. I was like, you'd be perfect for this. I will probably reach out to you again for Scream 2 because you'll probably be perfect
yeah,
for
let me
that.
know. Let
So
me
yeah,
know.
you make this very easy. So thank you so much for being on.
Thank you, Gaius. This was so much fun. And sorry I had to wrap it up early, but you're
No, you're good.
amazing.
You're
This is
good.
fun. Thank you.
Thank you.